The year was 1999, when the world was taken by surprise with the release of Pokemon Gold and Silver. These two sequels pushed the Game Boy Color to the max, where players had the ability to visit 2 regions, adding 100 brand new Pokemon on top of the original 151, and even adding compatibility to connect with Pokemon Stadium 2. These two sequels were so ambitious at the time that late into Pokemon Gold and Silver's development, Game Freak's team of programmers had to call upon Satoru Iwata, as the developers were having trouble with various coding bugs and fitting all of the game assets onto the small memory storage of the Game Boy Color's cartridges. Despite this, these two games went on to be critically acclaimed and loved by many, so much so that third version called Pokemon Crystal was released, adding a brand new story centered around Suicune and Eugene. Fast forward 10 years later and Game Freak released Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver, often referred to as the perfect Pokemon remakes of all time. Hello everyone, my name is King Zorik the Illusionist, and join me today as we take a look into why Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver are the perfect Pokemon remakes. When compared to the original games, Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver is packed to the brim with so much content that even the director of Heartgold and Soulsilver, Shigeki Morimoto, is often quoted saying, "There's so much included that even I had colleagues saying to me, 'Are you sure you should be going this far with the remake?' In that sense, it's simply not a remake. I think it's more than that. For that reason, I would like to see these games enjoyed by as large a number of people as possible. With that being said, calling something perfect is a subjective statement, and the words perfect can mean something different to everyone. So in order to get a deeper understanding of why these games are the perfect remakes, we're going to take an in-depth look at these games and all the brand new content and features it added. This way we can take an in-depth look at each element to get a better understanding as to how these games perfected the remake formula. It's no surprise to anyone that Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver have become some of the most beloved Pokemon games. Whenever these remakes are brought up in discussion, many Pokemon fans tend to rank these games highly. But why is this the case? Sure, nostalgia plays a factor, but these remakes have a certain charm to them that's hard for me to explain. They aren't exactly one-to-one remakes, sorta like Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were to Pokemon Red and Blue, but they're also not like Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that changed up the Hoenn region a little bit and has a slightly different story than the original Ruby and Sapphire. Heartgold and Soulsilver took the best parts of the original Johto games and improved upon them. Despite the title of Heartgold and Soulsilver, these two remakes are actually a remake of all 3 original Johto games: Gold, Silver, and Crystal. The very first thing that stands out is the graphical upgrade. Since these games came out 10 years after the originals, it's only natural that these games would look and sound better. The intro cutscene has changed from the originals as well, with a certain section being dedicated to Suicune. The only remade portion of the cutscene from the original games is Lugia swimming under the water and Ho-Oh flying in the sky. The routes and cities look more vibrant thanks to the Nintendo DS's superior graphical power. Places like Goldenrod City and the Bell Tower are more vibrant and filled with character, displaying how far these games have come graphically. But the graphics aren't everything. All the tracks from the original games have been remastered with additional tracks for special events, new locations, and places that use duplicate songs. For example, Ecruteak City and Cinewood City had the same song play in the originals, but now they have their very own song to represent themselves. But one of my favorite features in these remakes is the GB sounds. Whoever thought of this was a genius. It's obtained after you collect all 16 gym badges and lets you switch between the original soundtrack and the new soundtrack from the remakes. But the coolest part about the GB sounds is that you can head into areas that didn't exist in the originals and hear what they would have sounded like in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Finally, if you managed to buy these games when they were new, you happen to get a Pokewalker. This was a Pokeball-shaped pedometer that was not only more accurate than competing pedometers, but it also allowed you to take one of your favorite Pokemon with you outside of the game so you can obtain special items and battle new Pokemon. Now that I've gotten all the obvious changes out of the way, let's talk about the changes made in the game. One of the most interesting but beloved features that you get at the start of the game is the ability for your Pokemon to follow you in the overworld, the same way that Pikachu did in Pokemon Yellow. Not only does this make you feel closer with your favorite Pokemon, but it also shows Game Freak's attention to detail, since they had to animate sprites for all 493 Pokemon, for the special forms like Giratina, and include shiny variants of all the Pokemon. To this day, this is the best implementation in any Pokemon game of this feature. Another drastic change you may have noticed is the user interface. Since the Nintendo DS has an additional touchscreen, Game Freak made a lot of the features center around it. Of course, you have your basic features like choosing attacks and moving your Pokemon around in your party, but Game Freak just didn't stop there. They also added the auto run button so we don't have to constantly hold down the B button, and the ability to register 2 key items. One of the biggest improvements is the ability to play as a girl. This was missing in Pokemon Gold and Silver, but later became a feature in Pokemon Crystal. The only difference this time is that Lyra replaced Chris from Pokemon Crystal. On the surface, this may not seem like a necessary change, but quickly becomes necessary since the opposite gender of the one you chose becomes a fully fleshed support character, adding to the story. Now, let's take a look at one of the biggest changes that still affects Pokemon today. The physical and special split that happened in Generation 4. This was game changing and helped out a lot of Pokemon while hurting some others. To sum this up, there are 2 different types of attacks, physical attacks and special attacks. The amount of damage these attacks do is tied to how high the attack stat or special attack stat is for said Pokemon. In Generation 3 and below, certain types were tied to one of each category. For example, the move Bite was classified as a special attack since dark types were classified as a special attack type. With this split, moves are now based upon if they make contact or not instead of their type. For all my competitive fans out there, Pokemon summaries have been upgraded, making Pokemon natures a lot easier to understand by showing which stats are increased and showing which stats are decreased. From here, we can now take a look at the Pokegear. This device received a drastic overhaul from the original games. Now we have the ability to obtain every single phone number in the game, and it even added new radio stations that have numerous effects, like allowing you to catch certain Pokemon from the Hoenn and Sinnoh region on certain days and helping you find unknown forms that you've never seen before. This also leads into one of my favorite features not present in the original games, Gym Leader rematches. You can now register their phone numbers in your Pokegear by finding them at certain places during certain times of the week and challenge them to a rematch in Saffron City's fighting gym. They have teams at much higher levels than in the main story with added Pokemon from regions 3 and 4. Another big feature that was missing from the original games was the ability to see how many Kanto Gym badges you had. Luckily, the remakes fixed this, and now we can see both our Johto and Kanto Gym badges, making progression tracking simpler. And don't just think that Game Freak forgot about all you berry lovers. Since all the trees have been replaced with apricot trees used for crafting special Pokeballs with Kurt, Game Freak also added the berry pot that's way more convenient than having to backtrack to previous areas to pick berries, like in other games. Finally, the Pokedex was also given an upgrade, adding 5 Pokemon from the Sinnoh region, like Mamoswine and Yanmega, along with letting us switch between the regional decks and the national decks. And if you're thinking Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver are lacking on the legendaries, think again. With new in-game events along with some Wi-Fi events offered during the time, it was possible for you to obtain Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Latias, Latios, and Celebi. There was even some special areas designed for these legendary Pokemon like the Embedded Tower on the brand new Route 47 east of Cianwood City. But my favorite event was the special Arceus event that took you to a brand new area in the game named the Sinnoh Ruins. This area is located between Sinnoh and Johto. Here, we meet up with Cynthia and we watch an amazing cutscene where Arceus shows us real-world images that was only shown in these Pokemon games. Afterwards, we obtain a level 1 Pokemon from the Creation Trio. There was also a special event where you can obtain a spiky-eared Pichu and even time travel back in time with Celebi to learn about the backstory of Silver and Giovanni. You've seen in his story from Pokemon Crystal make a return, however it's treated like an optional side quest instead of part of the main story. His storyline is almost identical at first but differs in the end. In the remakes, you've seen follow Suicune to Kanto, chasing it around until it arrives at the Cerulean Cape where you can catch it instead of the Tin Tower. If you were to fail to capture it there, you can find it again in Ecruteak City just like in Pokemon Crystal. The other 2 legendary beasts are still roaming Pokemon, however the Pokegear's map makes it easier to track down these Pokemon and catch them. Another brand new area was the Safari Zone located east of the brand new Route 47. Sadly, this was the last introduction of the Safari Zone, but this was the best version of it. This place has so many areas that you can customize, and the Pokemon you can potentially find here are incredible. Pokemon like Beldum, Matang, Riolu, Lapras, and Shelgon are here just to name a few. Other locations were changed, like the Safari Zone located in Fuchsia City, now being replaced with the Pel Park from Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. This allowed players to migrate over their previous Pokemon from the Game Boy Advance Pokemon games. The Pokeathlon Dome was added, and here your Pokemon can compete in athletic events. As you complete these events, you can earn points to exchange them for items like Evolution Stones, along with gaining access to more rooms in the dome and trophies you can display. The Game Corner also received a major overhaul, replacing all the old slot machines with Voltorb Flip based around the game Minesweeper. The original slot machines were removed since it encouraged gambling amongst the younger player base. Mount Silver was completely changed to be made larger since Moltres can now be found in the lower sections of the mountain. Viridian Forest has been restored to its former glory instead of being a random tree maze. The Seafoam Islands were added back in the game, but unlike the originals where it is a small room where you could battle Blaine, you can now explore the original islands where there is an entire gym where you can challenge Blaine. Finally, Mount Moon has been shortened down, which is surprising since Viridian Forest and the Seafoam Islands seem to have been expanded on. To make a long story short, these remakes improved upon everything the originals lacked. I think part of what gives Heartgold and Soulsilver its added charm was the improvements in the characters we interact with. In the originals, it felt like it was just us and our Pokemon, but the way Game Freak gave certain side characters a much bigger role made the journey throughout the Johto region feel complete. Whenever I would see Lyra and her Marrow, I felt like I wasn't alone exploring the vast Johto region. Or whenever I had a battle against Silver, I understood he had something to prove to himself and that I'm just a small piece in his grand picture for defeating Team Rocket. With all the new added content and features compared to the original games, there are so many things that you can do throughout your playthrough. Certain Pokemon that were unusable in the originals due to their lackluster stats or strange restrictions locking them to the post-game have been fixed with the Safari Zone. The difficulty was increased when compared to the originals with the addition of new movesets and evolutions. I personally believe that Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver are pretty balanced with the given options presented to you, and the NPCs are more likely to use attacks that your Pokemon are weak against, unlike the original games. Heartgold and Soulsilver are what every remake should be, a modern version of a fan-favorite game that doesn't just deliver on the original experience, but improves upon all the flaws the classic games had. If I could sum these remakes up in one word, it would be perfect, and I think that's why an overall majority of Pokemon fans love these games so much. As I was gathering footage and writing the script, I had the luxury of playing through Pokemon Heartgold again. This reminded me of why I love the Pokemon franchise in the first place. If you haven't played these games before, I highly recommend checking them out, and I would love to hear your thoughts about these games. And if you already played through Pokemon Heartgold and Soulsilver, what do you think? Do you think they are perfect Pokemon remakes, or do you disagree? Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe for more Pokemon content. Also follow me on my new Twitter and check out another one of my videos. And if you have any suggestion on future videos, be sure to tell me in the comment section below. Until then, I will talk to you all next time. Goodbye.